COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted businesses across the globe and forced organizations to reimagine their strategy and ensure business continuity. Business leaders across industries have recognized significant value creation by adopting a cloud-first strategy. Enterprises began realizing that rapid digital transformation is crucial for business continuity, and in the process, put a lot of emphasis on multi cloud adoption strategies for their businesses to benefit from more agility and scale without the burden of vendor lock ins. Now, as the pandemic ushered India into a new era of digitization, along came with it an increase in cyber threats for the country. Welcome to CloudSec 2021. We have an array of discussions ranging from various topics such as the cloud play in India, emerging cybersecurity threats and regulations in digital banking, and the evolving role of cybersecurity in governments. But before we dive into the world of cloud adoption and cybersecurity, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Vijendra Katiyar, Country Manager, and Ms. Sharda Tikku, Technology Head, Trend Micro India and SARC, for their welcome addresses.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to CloudSec. The world is changing every day. The way we do business is changing. Customer expectations, trends are changing. Technology is changing. Economy is changing. And the fact is, Shraddha, businesses which fails to embrace this change are going to easily wind up like dinosaurs, out of touch, unable to compete. Especially in last 18 months, the rate of change has accelerated. Why? Because of more focus on digitization and adoption of cloud.
You talked about digitization, cloud adoption, IT change. I'm talking about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity has undergone a massive change. Vijendra, if cyber crime would have been the economy, it would be the third largest economy after US and China. So that is the massive scale of economy that we are talking about.
So true, Shraddha. And then, with this whole business, the way we are doing business is changing, technology is changing, and you mentioned about the new era of cybersecurity, it's just pushing the envelope for us to reimagine and redesign cybersecurity, right?
True. And talking about reimagining and redesigning, there are certain 4 key important aspects, or I would say the success factors for this reimagining and redesigning. First and foremost is the changing enterprise architecture and how that architecture is getting modernized. A second important aspect that we cannot ignore is to ensure that security is by design and it's not an afterthought. Third important aspect is that we know what our attack surface is with all this cloud adoption and everything. And fourth and most important is that how cybersecurity can be a business enabler, right? I'll spend some time talking about the modern architecture. Vijendra, you talk about digital transformation. So digital transformation is not a priority anymore. It has become imperative. If I speak to the CIOs, they say their focus has totally shifted towards driving the business. So they want to drive those projects that give them agility and ensure that businesses thrive, right? And as the clock is ticking, IDC estimates that by 2025, 90% of the organization will be prolific software developers. 75% of these applications will 90% of these applications will use cloud, and 75% will use the code that is externally sourced. Wow. And there will be 1.2 times more developers, right? So this is the scale that we are talking about. So clearly, the legacy enterprise architecture is not going to support that shift. So a redesign is overdue, right? One thing that we need to keep in mind is that when we are talking about redesigning, we don't have all of these new applications getting redesigned. We also have to we'll be probably ending up ourselves in the digital islands. It will run in silos because they don't connect with the applications which are still monolithic, which are still legacy, but they are the applications that drive the business. So the success of the digital transformation as a project will be determined how these legacy applications and these composite applications together are going to thrive. To summarize it, Vijendra, we are going to have an onslaught of application modernization. Another important factor, if I say, IDC says that by 2023, there will be 500 million more apps and services. That is, something more than 40 times more than what we had in last 40 years, right? So, and then when we are talking about these applications, they have to be available. They have to be, more importantly, secure.
Right. I think numbers are mind-boggling, Shraddha. And then, yes, Modern architecture is fueled by application modernization, and let's not forget how important is security by design.
Right.
Before I go into that, let's go back to basics. Today, if we are all aware that too many organizations merely adopt a very reactive approach to security,
I agree.
taking measures only when an incident or an attack happens, right? Now, on the other side of it, rather than avoiding trust altogether, it is important that how we enable, how avoiding risk, Shraddha. So how we enable trust within the systems, architecture, people, process, right? And that's where security by design comes in. When you talk about security by design, more than often we look at the technical aspect of it.
Right.
We also have to make sure that we create a culture of cybersecurity, right? And business leaders should be more vocal. They should start talking about the importance of cybersecurity. We always talk about business buy-in. We
Right.
always talk about even the board buy-in, right? And it is important, but at the same time, it is important for us to make sure that we keep on briefing the board about what is happening in cybersecurity, right? Again, looking at other aspect of cybersecurity, when you spoke about modern architecture and modern application way in which we are developing, right? Innovation is what is fueling all of these, right? And then we all are aware that unsecure innovation could lead to data loss and breaches.
Totally.
It's not because the security brings in delays when you talk about innovation. It's the other way around, actually. Security is introduced very late in the blueprint when you talk about innovation. And that's where it is important that it should be part of your discussion, part of your dialogue when you start making those blueprints, so that you avoid any kind of hindrances, misconceptions, while you're implementing such technologies. And that's where, the whole concept of security as a code or infrastructure as a code security comes in, especially when organizations are adopting DevOps culture.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe in Trend Micro. And Trend Micro Cloud One platform solution is very powerful, and it is enabling organizations to make sure that they have automated security and streamlining the security, especially when you're building a DevOps pipeline.
At the design phase.
Yeah.
Great, Vijendra. I couldn't agree more with you. And another third, area that I would really want to touch upon, which is in connection with what we've just said, is the attack surface, right? The attack surface has expanded, or if I may use the word, it has exploded.
Yeah, true.
Right? With all these modern ways of doing the business, the cloud transformation, the adopting microservices and containers and whatnot, your attack surface has exploded. And then, we keep on saying that employees continue to be the weakest link. I'm not sure if that still holds true, because employees, enterprises themselves feel so tough to deal with all of this threat, and we are expecting employees to be aware, right? So what do? I think a good starting point for an enterprises would be to quantify their attack surface, right? Which is to say that, hey, this is my attack surface, this is my exposure layer, I know this is what my risk is. So you quantify that risk, so that then you know that you can have a laser sharp focus on what is it that you need to protect, right? I think that is also something that a lot of enterprises are still struggling with currently. And how do we do this? The need of an hour is basically having to develop a platform-based approach rather than having a single point-based solution approach. So in Trend Micro, you talked about Cloud One, which is a platform-based approach. More recently, we also had Trend Micro Vision One, which is again a platform-based approach, wherein we keep on adding the features, the functionalities that are needed, for businesses to support as they are innovating or as they are, adapting the new ways of working.
True, Shraddha. And then, very important point you made around attack surface. Digital and connectivity, it's driving everything in the organization. And then let's not forget about IoT, Industry 4.0. That's just broadening the attack surface, as you mentioned, right? So there is so much to be taken care of. But then, one important aspect is also, how important is to think about cybersecurity as a business enabler. All this while we have been talking about IT as a business enabler.
Correct.
Right? Throughout the journey of cybersecurity's evolution, it has been termed as barrier, right? Something which is stopping the innovation or time to go to market, merger and acquisition, or something which is disrupting technology. Also, in few cases, it is holding the tag of a barrier brand, wherein it is something which has been introduced in the organization, which is meant for policing. Well, that's not the case. So it's time for us to reposition cybersecurity. And when we talk about change of perception, when it comes to cybersecurity, it has to happen across the organization.
I agree.
And that's where cybersecurity becomes pivotal, very important when it comes to whole digital transformation journey, to make sure that it is secure, it is agile, and at the same time it's fast, right? And security will actually not slow you down. So, Shraddha, I think when you talk about reimagining and redesigning cybersecurity, I think all these four aspects are very, very important, right? Modern architecture, of course, which is like creating a new baseline
Yeah.
for everything. Attack surface getting broadening every day when we introduce new elements.
Yeah.
Security by design, which is fundamental, which is now going to become fundamental, and of course the mindset of having cybersecurity becoming a business enabler. True, right?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there is the time has come wherein cybersecurity cannot just support the business. There has to be the multi-stakeholder buy-in, and cybersecurity has to be the true business enabler.
Yeah. With that, thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good event.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Katiyar. Thank you, Ms. Sharda. And now it's time for a fireside chat. Cloud computing is transforming industries across sectors and regions. Increasingly, companies will upgrade to hybrid environments in the coming years. And to continue to secure both cloud and on premise environments, existing security controls must be extended and frequently retooled. Identifying and mitigating cybersecurity risks before they occur is the goal of cyber security risk management for organizations. With large scale data breaches still remaining a major issue, can shifting to cloud computing be the answer industries are looking for? To discuss the importance of cybersecurity for cloud environments, strategizing a cloud infrastructure to ensure data protection, and trend micros offerings to ensure great security, I'm pleased to welcome Prasad Ramakrishnan, CIO of Freshworks, along with Mr. Katiyar from Trend Micro. Welcome, gentlemen. Mr. Ramakrishnan, let me start with you. The pandemic accelerated the pace of the digitalization of businesses across the world, and it gave rise to an emergence of hybrid work scenarios. What key trends emerged in terms of cloud adoption over the last year, and what were the key challenges faced by the company from a data and cloud security perspective? And if I may add to that question, will hybrid work models pose new challenges for IT and security?
The pandemic, as you rightly pointed out, accelerated the digital transformation for a lot of companies. In fact, Satya Nadella said it the best, right? Where he said companies that wanted to transform digitally from a 18 to 24-month period, if they had a 24-month roadmap, they were forced to accelerate that into a 2-week roadmap, right? The pandemic hit us really hard, and companies were forced to adapt to the new normal. So there is no escaping the fact that we have to go digital in this post-pandemic era, right? And if you look at one of the questions you are asking, which is hybrid work scenario, right? That's going to become the new norm. Thankfully, with the advent of vaccines and with the large portions of the population being vaccinated now, we now have the ability to now slowly start returning to work. So from a model where we were more work from home, it is going to be more return to work, and the hybrid workplace where you're going to have some people working from home and some people working from the office is going to be the norm. So if you rewind the clock to 2020, when the pandemic hit, one of the things that we were faced with, and which I'm sure other companies were faced with, is how do I keep my business continuity going, right? And companies that adopted what we call as a SaaS first approach or a cloud first approach, they had most of the business services, business applications happening on the cloud. And companies that did not have that ended up having to sign up for services which enable them to either go to Amazon or Google or any of the other cloud players, or to SaaS players to keep the business running. We introduced tools such as single sign-on, right, where instead of users needing to remember 100 different passwords, when they're in the office, if they forget a password, they could walk up to the IT desk and say, "Yeah, I need some help here." But think about it: we are all now remote. There's nobody to walk to, right? The only person you can walk to is your family member. So we wanted to reduce that friction. We were in the middle of a rollout. We accelerated the rollout of our single sign-on technology. And at Freshworks, we use our own products. We use Fresh Service, which is an ITSM tool. So all the tickets which employees were raising, we made it easy for them to report the tickets into our ITSM platform, which enabled us to give top-notch service to our employee base, right? So I was more responding to the first part of your question in terms of the whole digitalization and the hybrid work environment. You had a question about what new challenges it introduces from a IT and security perspective. The way I look at it is, irrespective of whether you're in a work from home mode or work from office mode, right? Security challenges are always going to be there. There is nothing that you need to do extra. In fact, what I would say is there is nothing in terms of new challenges that emerge, right? Granted that when you're working from home, your home network is traditionally less secure than a corporate network, right? So all the checks and balances that we have to put in place to take care of securing the home network and making sure that we put multiple layers of security before employees access the properties that they need to access, the digital properties that they need to access, those checks and balances have already been put in place. So it is about now continuing to stay ahead of all the threat actors and the bad actors, and continuing to invest in security mechanisms that make it easy for employees to do their job.
Right. Thank you for that detailed insight. Mr. Katiyar, Trend Micro's consistent and agile approach towards cloud security has seen great traction. How does the company want to leverage its strength and educate users to move to cloud-based SaaS model security than an old premise model?
Yes, definitely. You talked about having great traction. We have seen really good traction, and especially in last 1 year, right? We got more than 200 plus customers in India from financial vertical, retail, and healthcare. One thing which we saw clearly, and then Prasad did mention about the hybrid environment. We saw that most of the customers are talking about and adopting hybrid and multi-cloud strategy, right, for deploying their resources, and they do so to get best out of different cloud service providers, right? And then I'm sure Freshworks would have adopted a very similar strategy. Now this is the new normal again, right? But what one thing which we again see is some of the challenges for companies when it comes to adopting this multi-cloud or hybrid cloud strategies around lack of visibility, misconfiguration, human error, which is mostly related to limited skill sets, right? And most importantly, in most of the organizations, you see so many different tools which are being used, which adds on to the management overhead. So this is where Trend Micro Cloud One platform actually delivers value to the customer. Cloud One as a platform is completely SaaS-based, single sign-on, and there are multiple different capabilities, different services which can be accessed from a single console, right? Now, so whether the customer is migrating to cloud or whether you talk about adopting multiple cloud native applications, right? So the job Cloud One does is ensures that security is built in right early when you're talking about when you're building the entire workflow, and not an afterthought, right? So, and this we do it without disrupting or disturbing customers' environment, ensuring that security becomes part of the whole cycle, whether it is build phase, deployment phase, or whether you talk about runtime, right? And it seamlessly integrates with different cloud native tools, ensuring that we give you that in-depth visibility during the build phase and also during the deployment phase. So it's as easy as for any customer, they can just go to cloud1.trendmicro.com, use their credentials, and they can start using multiple different services of Cloud One. So that's where it becomes so easy, right? You don't have dependency like how we have in the on-prem model, and with SaaS, right? And this was discussed in your previous question, that how easy it is to exit and enter when you have a SaaS model, right? So that makes it even more interesting.
Mr. Ramakrishnan, what are the ways in which your company is working towards achieving a multi-fold model security architecture that is both agile and robust while also providing a highly resilient service? Additionally, how does Freshworks scale its security infrastructure, and how do you maintain customer experience and employee satisfaction in doing so?
Thank you for that question. In fact, I think the last part of your question, where you talked about customer experience and employee experience, if you look at the mission of Freshworks, our mission is to delight our employees and customers and make it easy for our customers to delight their employees and their customers, right? So going back to your security question, right? Security is at the heart of pretty much everything we do here at Freshworks, right? Being a product company, customers have put the responsibility and the onus of maintaining and securing their customer information they have put that responsibility on us, and we take that responsibility very seriously. So security is built into everything that we do. And like most companies that operate security at scale, we take a layered approach to security, right? We fortify the production environment, have different layers by which before anybody can access the production environment from within our employee base, they have to go through multiple layers of they get challenged with multiple layers of password and security before they can access the production environment. Plus all the required controls in terms of fortifying the production environment so that bad actors don't come in and insert malicious code, or can come in or try to come and take the customer information. We have fortified the environment so that we have got the meaningful level of security there. In addition, we have monitoring and threat monitoring so that we are now staying one step ahead of the bad actors, so that in case there is an incident, we have an incident response team, and we have a full-fledged security organization which responds constantly and is looking for all the CVEs that are out there, and making sure that we are staying on top. But security is only as good as the employees and the tools that we bring into our environment, right? So a couple of things that we do there. One is, before we bring tools, one of the philosophies which I've talked about in other forums as well is democratizing the entire software purchase lifecycle, right? So it is not just about what top management wants in terms of the tool. We involve our users in the decision-making process. And one of the key users that we involve in the decision-making process is the InfoSec team, right? The InfoSec team has a very solid say in terms of any tool that we bring into our enterprise. We go through a very detailed evaluation of all the tools so that it meets all of our stringent security requirements. The second aspect comes back to employees. Now, if you look at the weakest chain in any company as it relates to security, it's typically the employees. You can put the world's best tools, but then if you leave the front door open, you've actually left the bad actor. You've given them an opportunity to come in and take away whatever they want. So rather than investing just in tools, we spend a lot of time educating our employees. We make it part of their day-to-day job, and we do frequent drills. We do mock drills, right? We talk to them frequently about phishing attacks. We talk to them frequently about why is it important to change your password on a frequent basis. So some of these things we handle through policy, but a lot of it we do through education, so that security should never be seen as an afterthought. If you make it as part of the way you do your work, and if you make it as part of the way you work with the various tools that you work with, then you do not have that many incidents, right? So, and being a cloud native company, we obviously leverage all the security tools that AWS and other such providers that we leverage. We obviously leverage all of those tools that they provide, right? But I think we need to look at it holistically from the production environment, from a tool onboarding, as well as from an employee perspective. That gives you a full 360-degree view of how you're looking at security.
Mr. Katiyar, taking this point forward, with the current ever-changing threats in the digital world, how do businesses deal with delays in incident response and breaches due to lack of visibility and misconfigurations? Is there anything that an organization can do to implement more proactive security prevention within its cloud-based infrastructure?
I think you raised two major points here. First, let's talk about the delay in incident response. And if we understand this, it relates mostly to MTDD and MTTR, which is mean time to detect and respond to a threat. Now, in spite of various different advanced security tools we have implemented across different verticals, but if you see in last 3 to 4 years, nothing has changed. We are still talking about close to 200 days when it comes to detection and response. Now, adding on top of it complexity of cloud with multiple different services and too many moving parts, right? And it is also adding to the whole attack surface, which is just exploding. Now, as an industry, one major challenge which we see is we have invested into technologies like SIM and SOAR, which are very good platforms, but then we are still struggling with understanding how we can prioritize those alerts or vulnerabilities. What should be the focus? What we should deal with first, right? So it's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? So our philosophy in Trend Micro is very simple. Prevent maximum, but make sure that you have right kind of visibility across multiple different security layers, which is either your endpoint, your network, your email, or your cloud, right? So we need to understand that what cloud services we are using. Are they risky? When you talk about entities, which is the user who's accessing that application or the device or an application per se, are those healthy? And when you talk about the health of these entities, it's just not related to they being infected or they having a malware. It's also about what vulnerabilities they are carrying, right? And then compare it with globally, that how relevant it is or relevant to your industry. And the third important question which you should ask and understand is how securely they are connecting to these apps. Once we have an answer to it, and this is what we do, is we get you that answer. We identify the risk these entities are carrying, and we give it a risk score, and based on that you have a risk index for the organization, right? So one, giving you the right visibility, giving you that identity centric risk insight, and that extended detection response, which just goes beyond one parameter, which is endpoint. So more or less, if you see as an industry, we are talking a lot around EDR, detection response around endpoint, but then there are multiple different layers, right? And we need to make sure that the detection response capability is just not limited to endpoint. So when we take care of this visibility, when we have the right visibility, we have the right measurement by understanding the identity centric risk, and having the extended detection response, we can do a lot to automate and make sure that we bring down these MTDD and MTDR, mean time to detect and respond, right? So that's one. Second question you spoke about was around misconfigurations. Now, a lot of analysts today, if you see, they are talking about that most of the breaches in the cloud happens due to misconfiguration and human error, right? That is the real problem. And this is just a growing problem, as in when we see, we keep on adding new and new services. There is whole explosion of services which is happening. Now, it is very difficult to keep that basic hygiene factor. Adding to that, we spoke about limited skill set. We spoke about that how we sometimes miss the right skill set, irrespective of how expert you are in a certain service. It is always difficult to keep up, right? When you keep adding new services, there is always a chance that misconfigurations will creep in. That is where we as a cybersecurity partner to a customer work very closely to ensure that our customers get that real time monitoring and automated remediation. So even if you're not an expert in certain cloud services, we can help you address these misconfigurations and improve your security posture. So that's what we do. That's how we can help become organizations more proactive by providing visibility and automating a lot of things, and then by making sure that we keep on doing continuous monitoring.
Wonderful, wonderful. I wish you many new milestones, both Mr. Ramakrishnan and Mr. Katiyar, for your companies. Thank you, Mr. Prasad. And may I request Mr. Katiyar to stay back? Well, we heard from the customer side on their journey and how they are building security guardrails. Now we'll have a quick conversation with a leading cloud service provider and discuss a very important aspect of how cloud and cybersecurity go in tandem to help customers in their digital transformation journey. To have this discussion with Mr. Katiyar, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Anupam Mishra, Head of Technology and Solution Architecture, AWS India and South Asia. Mr. Mishra, welcome to the show. Cloud has become the new normal, and post-pandemic, there is a pattern of increased migration projects in cloud. What would you recommend to a large organization looking forward to migrations, best practices, and of course, mistakes to avoid?
As you shared, that pandemic has accelerated a lot of cloud migration. We see it across AWS, ranging from small customers to large customers. It has accelerated the businesses to adopt cloud, be it for agility, some of that for cost effectiveness. And most of the businesses have to react very quickly to the needs of their businesses, which they had never anticipated before. For example, in the banking sector and insurance sector, we were seeing remote KYC becoming very, very important because customers were no longer able to visit a bank or an office. Similarly, in some of the other offices which were living in a very short supply, or the employees had to show up to the office, they were thinking about security and making sure they're providing a safe environment to their employees. So they were working on things like mask compliance, thinking about touchless entry. Similarly, we also saw some companies had seen a demand from their customers, which they never thought. So for example, we all know of a company called Big Basket, which is India's largest online grocery shop. They've been in business since 2011, and they operate in 21 cities. Before pandemic hit, they used to have about 20 to 30% growth every year. But when COVID struck in India and India went into lockdown, everybody wanted online grocery. So they saw unprecedented demand, which was almost 6 times of any peak they had seen before COVID. Now they were thinking, how do we react to this? How do we serve this demand without failing on this awesome opportunity? So the good thing in their case was they had already begun on a containerization journey where they use asynchronous work queues wherever possible, so that you don't have to react to all the traffic coming that time. You do a lot of post processing, you do some decoupling, and that came to be a very big rescue for them. They were able to shift to a complete containerized journey. By mid 2020 itself, they had 60 microservices created on Kubernetes from their monolith, and they were able to automatically scale to the needs which they were seeing. The daily order volume in their case went from an average of 250,000 in 2019 to about 400,000 in 2020. So huge growth, and the companies were able to react very quickly if they had cloud as a strategy already. We are also seeing another pattern. A lot of large enterprises, be it in banking and financial sector, they are also now realizing that the world is becoming more and more uncertain, and you need to be much more agile business. So if we take an example of the latest bank which we had a deal with, we recently worked with Axis Bank, which is India's third largest private sector bank. And they have committed to use AWS to build their new financial services and banking experience. So through this tie-up, they are intending to open online accounts, which take anywhere up to less than 6 minutes with instant digital payments. And they're also hoping that they will be able to increase their customer satisfaction by 35% and reduce the cost by 24%. So awesome uptick in terms of how banking and financial services customers are thinking. Now I want to share some of the best practices, because while these migrations are happening, we also see a lot of good stories in the terms of what is working well and what are the common lessons we have seen across all these migrations. So one of the biggest takeaway I would have, given that a lot of security conscious folks are in this panel and in this audience, don't think of security as an afterthought. It's a very common thing for all of us, but sometimes companies think of this as an afterthought. Okay, let's move and then we'll figure it out. I think it should be a thought before you start your journey, thinking about cloud COE or center of excellence. If you're a large company, how many people you need, what type of responsibilities those people will have, what processes you need, what technology you need, how will this work end to end, what will be your plan of acting on anything which is detected, what software you use, what do you not use. The second thing which I would suggest is using architecture best practices wherever possible. So one of the guidance I have here is on AWS, we have something called a trusted advisor, which gives you a list of actions which you can take to become better in different dimensions. And the dimensions are things like high availability, resiliency, security, performance, and cost optimization. So use that as one of the framework which gives you guidance that if you want to become more secure, these are the 3 things you can do. These are the 5 things you can do if you want to become more cost effective. The next thing I would share is a lot of times it's very natural to do a lift and shift. It's probably one of the most common ways large enterprises move. They think, okay, let me move this and then do more optimization. It's totally okay, and this is the most natural approach. The one thing that I would suggest is when you do the lift and shift, after that, think about what would be your plan to take the real value of cloud, which is don't do undifferentiated heavy lifting. Think about what technologies you need, what partners you need to collaborate with, what type of features which you will use that will allow your team to do things which really matter for your business. So for example, there are a bunch of examples here. So I'll give you 1 or 2 small examples. There's a service called Amazon S3, which is used for storing data. Similarly, we have a service called EBS, which is a block storage service. Now, if you're coming from a traditional world, you probably would have NAS or SAN set up for storing data. But with cloud service and services like S3, which are very resilient, scalable, and cost-effective, you don't need all these solutions. You can think about, how do I use a technology which comes as part of the cloud and free up my capacity of people as well as free up some of the costs to take the advantage of what cloud provides natively. Same goes for a lot of other things like encryption, which can come as an inbuilt feature on most of the services or products you use. So all in all, what I would suggest is cloud offers a lot of value in terms of how you can quickly react, the value which you get, the undifferentiated heavy lifting which you don't have to do, and just think of what is the end goal you have, and take steps towards the end goal. Don't think of things in isolation.
Wonderful. Mr. Katiyar, would you like to add to that? What would your recommendations be?
Yeah, I really liked Anupam highlighted that how security should not be an afterthought, right? And this is what we believe in Trend Micro, and this is what we help customers to do, right? When you talk about cloud migration, it cannot be an overnight journey. It's a transition. So when we work with large enterprises, we see that eventually they are building out into a hybrid cloud. And what role we play is to give them that visibility, ensure that the security becomes consistent across different environments, right? And additionally, it is very important for us to make sure that customer operations are not impacted at all. So we do support a lot of different platforms, right, ranging from Windows, Linux, different flavors of cloud Linux, and of course, legacy platforms. I think that is very one important aspect we take care of.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Katiyar. Mr. Katiyar, the question again to you. FSI and government organizations always tend to have stringent governance and compliance needs. And to add to this, there are demands for data sovereignty as well. How does Trend Micro help ensure adherence to such standards?
Yeah, one thing which we are seeing clearly, and Anupam highlighted that, banks are adopting banking, which is a very regulated industry, are adopting cloud, right? And then as a cybersecurity partner to most of the organizations, we have been consistently engaging and working with them, whether from banking vertical or different financial vertical or government. One thing which we clearly understand, Mukta, is that these are highly regulated industries, and also realize that they are rapidly adopting cloud, right? Because to get that business agility, to get that advantage. So we help the customer to conform, to make sure that their infrastructures are complying to the standards and frameworks, whether it is PCI DSS, SOC 2, ISO, and very importantly, for financial institutions, especially using those object storage, it is important to make sure the files are scanned for malware, right, as a part of the compliance. And the same goes for healthcare industries, wherein as part of HIPAA compliance, they have to make sure that whenever the files are moved to the storage, they are scanned for malware. One important aspect is we are seeing an increase in use of cloud native technologies, especially containers, Kubernetes, and whatever researchers have found out that these are also becoming the target for the hackers, right, and which could lead to breaches. And that is where I think one important point which we discussed was around how security can be built in early and brought into the framework, especially into container images. At the same time, ensuring that we are complying, we're helping to comply with the various different regulations, right, which we discussed, whether it is HIPAA or NIST. Finally, one important point which I want to make sure that which we have done recently, and then we keep invested in to ensure that our customers can take care of security as well as compliance in India and globally. So having said that, very recently we have launched Cloud One, our hybrid cloud security platform, hosted in India in AWS, to ensure that all these regulated bodies don't have to worry about data sovereignty as an issue.
Mr. Katiyar, that leads me to our next question for Mr. Mishra. How does AWS collaborate with cybersecurity vendors like Trend Micro? And how does the customer get benefit of speed of cloud and wisdom of security vendors? If you can call out some patterns and anti-patterns while architecting for security.
Sure. So one thing which is core to what we do at AWS is our partner ecosystem. We are very proud to have that ecosystem of partners. And one thing which is very important to understand is the way we build features and products at AWS is driven by customers. More than 90% of our product and features come from what our customers ask us. And a lot of times, this leads to thinking about what are the things which are provided as cloud native features, what we provide as a part of our partner ecosystem. And a lot of these partner products are available through our marketplace. One other thing which is important to understand here is whenever we work at AWS, whenever we have a competing priority, we always think of security as our top priority. There's no second stance on it. Where we always think that security, if we are not secure, nothing else can be done. So security is always our highest priority. And there's a concept of shared security model, which is very important for us to know, which is at AWS, we take care of the security of the platform or security in the of the cloud. So we'll make sure that the cloud which is provided is secure, whereas customers take care of security in the cloud. Now, it is very similar to any other traditional, if you can want to compare it with a desktop or machine, a specific hardware is given to you, and it's up to you to decide which ports you want to open, how much exposure you want to have to a specific machine, what firewalls you want to install, what kind of scanning you want to do. So all of this is left up to customers, because we provide all the tools and technologies. By default, we make things secure, but we give control to customers to decide which things are best for them. Now, coming to how we partner with the partners like Trend Micro, we always think about what are the opportunities which we have to provide and cater to needs of our customers. So with this in mind, we've been working very closely with Trend Micro. In fact, we have built some solutions together, not just one, multiple solutions together. And one recent example which I want to call out is when customers are dealing with malware, which is something which you don't want in your network, you'll be scanning. And scanning is not the only problem there. The bigger challenge is detecting it quickly and acting on it quickly. And malware finding alerts from Trend Micro can be integrated very easily with products like AWS Security Hub, which is a single pane of glass, which allows you to see what is happening across your AWS account, across your AWS setup with partners as well as native AWS services. And this integration with the Trend Micro gives very good corrective actions which a customer can take, such as isolating content and blocking some offending IPs, maybe blocking certain user agents which are malicious in nature. And there are numerous examples like this where we work very closely with the partners like Trend Micro and help our customers get what is really important.
As the original saying goes, sky is the limit, but I think it is only fair to say now, cloud is the limit. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your thoughts and shedding light on the cloud adoption space. Well, next up, we have an elite panel coming up to discuss the emerging cybersecurity threats and regulations in digital banking.